Good morning, everyone. My name is Barclay Hagan. I am the Director of Client Care here at OnPoint. And this morning we have Mike Pazynski, who is going to show us how you can save time and gain efficiency with Spectrum Data Exchange. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to enter those in the question portion of the GoToWebinar control panel, and we will have time to answer those at the end of the session. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Mike.
Thanks, Barclay. Yeah, thanks for joining everyone. So we're going to cover, and this is a really popular topic, both during implementations, but then after you're live for efficiency, and that is Spectrum Data Exchange, or SDX as it's called. And so what is SDX? SDX is it's a technology. It's a web service that allows information to electronically go into your Spectrum database and also be pulled from your Spectrum database. And so the question in my mind is, well, what would you use this for? And the best example is during implementations. You know, everyone that has been through implementations, you know that, for instance, in accounts receivable, you've got to get all of your customers in there. You might have 50, you might have 5,000. Okay, well, you can enter those manually, but you can also bring those in through Spectrum Data Exchange or electronically. Same thing with maybe your vendor list or your employee list, your job list. Over time then, after we're past beginning balances, some companies may be generating sales orders or maybe generating jobs in another system, a CRM or something. Well, you can use web services or SDX templates to bring in those jobs or bring in those orders, so you don't have to bring them in manually. And so there's an option there. You can use the templates that we're going to explore. You can also bring it in electronically with code that uses the web service. And if that's something that interests you, give us a call and we can talk more about it. For today, we're going to talk about the templates, though. You know, we got to start at the beginning, and that's where we'll start. Let me hop back over to the PowerPoint, make sure I'm staying on track. So let's talk first about how do you install these templates? How do you install what they come in the Microsoft Excel add-in is what they do. The installation is very straightforward. In your system, you'll go System Administration, and then you'll go Utilities, and then you'll go Data Exchange Download. Now, when you do this, you have to already have an authorization ID set up, and we'll cover that next. But you would then pick that authorization ID, and then you would hit Export. So tips and tricks. The first time you do this, 9.9 times out of 10, your browser wants you to confirm that you do indeed want to download something. You'll hit Export. Always watch up here in your URL bar to see if your browser's blocking it, so that you can tell it, nope, I do indeed want to do that. Okay. So you can see mine's downloading here. You'll let it download, and then you'll simply run the thing. And what that will do then is install an add-on to your Microsoft Excel. Now, I'm going to point you to more resources on this and step-by-steps before we're done. So we'll cover this overview here so you can kind of get a sense for the general flow of it. Gonna wait till he finishes. We'll say open when done. So he opened in another screen, and you'll simply hit the setup.exe. Here's my download, my VP Office admin. Here's my download I did, and then you'll hit on this setup. I'm sorry, on the setup.exe. You'll hit the setup.exe, and then there'll be a wizard that pops open that's pretty self-explanatory. Okay, and again, I'll send instructions on that or show you where to get those instructions. So now we have installed Data Exchange, and on your Excel then, you'll have a new Spectrum tab. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Now, prior to this, your system administrator will have set up your backside for you. What they will do is they'll go to System Admin, they'll go to Installation, and they're going to go to Data Exchange. and they're going to go new and type in a user ID for you. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and pick one that's already set up. And what they're going to do is tell the system which company or companies that you can import data to or synchronize data to. They're going to associate that login ID to your Spectrum operator code. There's an inactive versus active switch here. And then they're going to tell the system which web services you have permissions to use. Let's say, for instance, that the only thing that you can do is bring in change requests. They'll hit build and they'll pop over to accounts receivable and hit go to see all of the potential services. I'm going to deselect all of these just for the example. And when they get there, it'll start like this. And what they'll do is they say the only thing you can do is bring in a change request, and they'll add that authorized web service to your login ID or to your ID. Okay. There are a few more things to this, especially, again, tips and tricks, especially if you're bringing in user-defined fields. And in a little bit, I'll show you where some of those resources are to get that information. So step one, your system admin would have set up your authorization ID. Step two, on every workstation that's going to use SDX, you're going to go system admin, utilities, and you're going to download and then install the add-in. Okay. So when you're using this add-in, and I'm going to pop over to this change request that I've started. Oops, he's the other one. When you're using this add-in, the system is going to enforce all of the business rules that would be enforced when you manually enter. All right, I would think of it that way. So that if you put in an incorrect job number that doesn't exist, or leave the customer code blank, well, you can't do a change request manually if you miss those things, and you can't do it on the template either. All right, and I'll get more into this template, but that's important to know, is that the business rules are enforced. And in this example with this change request template, the idea is, you might be getting change information through emails throughout the day, or somebody doesn't have Spectrum, a way to put in changes, so they send it to you. This is a way to compile it very quickly as you go, and then synchronize it all at once, versus putting them in one by one. Now, a lot of companies put them in one by one, and that works just fine. This is just my example of using a change request template. You can also use, there are job setup templates, there's phase setup templates, there's schedule of value templates. You are aware of those by going to Spectrum templates, and then here's that list. Okay, now I've been talking a lot about the download and the installation. You can get those things in the help files. If you're in Spectrum and you go help, and then help by module, and then data exchange, there are a number of topics here. Two real goodies are the Office add-in manual, okay, talks about it from a user perspective. And there's also one for the admin folks. It's under, is it under overview? It's under data exchange, installation, data exchange reports, and then it's kind of buried here, the authorization setup manual. This guy's a real jewel tool for your admin folks on how to set up your authorization ID. Now, if you forget that, or you want to just find a place to get that where it's a little bit easier to navigate to, hop out to our website. I'm going to go out to onpointsoftware.com, and we've got a page here with helpful files that we've assembled over the years, commonly asked questions. So I went to resources and helpful files, and down here under implementation, or Barclay, were those files put here under implementation?
They're right under training, actually.
Okay. I'm not seeing them.
Third one down.
Let's move those to implementation, okay? Because these apply in this phase. Anyway, there are two help files here. It's the Spectrum Data Exchange Office add-in, and then the Spectrum Data Exchange Authorization Setup. These are those two help files that'll get you pretty much anything you need. you can also get them through the help files. All right, let me shut this down. Okay, what does it require to do data exchange? Well, number one, you've got to have the data exchange module. All right, download data exchange. Number two, you have to set up that authorization ID. And then number three, you have to download and install the Office add-on, and we've gone through all of those. Tips and tricks, also remember, if there's a Spectrum upgrade, you've got to reinstall that add-in. Okay. All right, so let's get into this now. Let's get into the software. In this example, I've downloaded the add-in. Okay, I know that because I've got Spectrum on my menu. After that, I went to About, and I put in my authorization ID and company code and hit test, and it got approved. All right, and that's in that documentation. That's a one-time step just to make sure the dots are connecting. All right, and then also, as you know, my authorization ID was set up before this. Now, if to use these things, you'll go to Spectrum, you go to templates, and you'll pull in your Excel spreadsheet, your Excel template. Important to note, you can't save these things. There are some security concerns, and so you cannot save these templates. If this is saved data, you would copy paste that data into a fresh template. Okay. And so in my example, I'm bringing in change requests. And so on this particular template, I've got my company code, my job and customer. I've got a description, and maybe in this one, I've got double the rebar. That's the description of my change. And you know, the idea is to get these change requests in as fast as you can and as easy as you can. And this might be a good option for you all. My change request 2 is approved. Am I cost reimbursable? Yes, I'm going to bill it. And these should all be familiar to you from entering in manual change requests. And then I put in my dates, origination date, approved date. I put in my phase code and cost type. And then if I have it, I put in my amount. You know, based on your processes, if it's approved, you may know that's a guess right now, just for impact on the project, knowing you're gonna buy it out or whatever, or price it and hone it later. Also, if you know the price to your customer, or you have an idea, maybe you told something maybe there was a field directive to just do it, and you gave the person a high-low, you would then put in the amount of that price, and here's that change request revenue, $2,500. So I would consider these the minimal fields on a change request. You might not put in the phase, cost type, and amounts, just have the event itself that you follow up on, but very minimal information. And now I'm going to hit sync. Now watch what happens to my rows 1, 2, 3 when I hit sync. You'll see 2 is now hidden. So I know that it went into my system. If I hit show all, it'll unhide what it's previously synced, and I can rehide it. Incidentally, these statuses, there are a number of sync statuses, and those are also in the help files, so that as you are working with this and troubleshooting, so you know what those status codes are. Now, to look at the damage I have done, I'm going to pop into my project, OnPoint Professional Center, and I'm going to go over to my change log, and I can see that I've brought in change 1 double lot 4, double the rebar. Here's my dates, here's my amount, and cost estimate. So that's one example of bringing in information through SDX. If you're interested in what else can be brought in, you can peruse these templates. You can also go to the help file. I'm going to pop back into help in Spectrum, and then help by module, pop up to data exchange. And then to see a listing of the services and the specs around them, click on web services, and then hover over web service details, and you'll see a list of modules here. So if I hover over job cost, you'll see I've got a job template. Notice also I've got a job update template, all right? And these weren't always all here. They're added over time as people request things, but I've got a job, I've got a phase, I can bring in projections, bring in cost, bring in phase notes, as well as job notes, all right? If you need to know the specs in terms of assumptions and dependencies and also what's in these files, go ahead and click on that service. But go back to job cost job. And two very important pieces of information: the underlying file maintenance that needs to be in place. You've got to have a job cost installation screen done, okay? And then also assumptions and dependencies. So it's important to become familiar with these. Also notice this is add a job. So as you're looking at these help files, look at and see what the service is. Is it add or is it update? And then as you go down, these are the columns in Excel. Column B is the company code. Column C is the job number. Notice one place that we go here a lot to look at is date fields. If I can find a date field on a job. Is the date field month, month, day, day, year, year, or is it month, month, day, day, century, century, year, year? So that's a real, we come here all the time to make sure we've got the dates right. All right, examples of when these things are used. Again, we use them heavily during conversion to bring in what I call master file information. Your geo chart of accounts, your list of vendors, list of customers, list of employees, all right, those come in through templates. And then after you go live, you may find that some of these templates work well for you for day-to-day processing just because it's more efficient. Okay, that's all I have. Don't forget to go through those manuals. That'll be the best thing you can do then is to become familiar with the ins and outs in there. And then I strongly suggest when you do start using these templates, bring in just a few rows and make sure you've got it down and all of the required fields are filled out, and you know what your data needs to look like for it to come in successfully. A lot easier to do that on a few tests than all at once. Also, something I've left out, field columns that are in yellow are required. Okay, so if a job number is required, a customer code is required. All right, if we pop back over to the job import, you can see that my job number is required. That's the only thing. The taxable is required, price code, my price method code, my apologies. What I was thinking about when I said that is notice the cost center is blue. What that's meaning is if it's part of your configuration, not everyone uses cost centers. In the early days of the product, you know, this is pre-cost center, we had other ways to handle some of these things. So there might be companies that don't use cost centers. That's why it's blue. It's only if you use it. All right, I've been rambling, trying to get a lot of information in this short amount of time. We do this all the time on new implementations and with customers we come across that need help with this. So if you need anything, please give us a holler. Just in quick recap, we've gone through how to install the thing. We've gone through setting up authorization logins. We did an example of that change request, and probably most important, it's where to go to get more information. And again, that's on our website, onpoint-software.com. Go to resources, helpful files, and then it'll either be under training or implementation and setup, but it's the Office add-in and the authorization setup. All right, Barkley, I'm going to hand it back off to you here.
Hey there, Mike. We did have one question. Can you talk again about the options to bring in jobs?
The options to bring in jobs. I'm going to answer that with respect to SDX and then talk about that from a bigger perspective. To bring in jobs, there are templates we can use to bring in the components of a job. In other words, there's a job import, but you know, if we think about it, a job is going to have phases, right? And then there's also the phase import to bring in your cost code / phases as well as your estimates. So job import, phase import, and then there's also a schedule of values import to bring in your upstream pricing to your customer. All right. Note that there are two schedule of values import. There's a fixed price, and then there's a unit price schedule of values. So if you're using SDX to set up your jobs, you would use those three templates: job, phase, and schedule of values. Okay. Just in case that was a broader question, like job setup, you know, there's always the old manual way of going job cost, maintenance, jobs, and going new and doing everything manually. If you're using templates, a lot of companies will hit new and set up the basic information that's on this quick setup screen and then bring in schedule of values and phases with the templates. A lot of companies do it that way, as well as going down properties and putting in work state or other things your company requires. So that's another way to bring in jobs. There's also a way to bring in jobs called import estimates. That's an alternative. It's a completely different alternative. That's used when you've got an estimating system that's generating a file that contains your phases, that contains your schedule of values, and sometimes your subcontracts as well, if buyout's done. What that'll take then is setting up a job through that quick screen and then going to import and then bringing in the estimate with the phases, schedule values, and subs if they are there. And of course, you'll always go back through the other installation screen, the other properties screens if they apply. And then last but not least, what we see a lot when you do create new jobs, you can set up templates, set up a quick job template that may or may not have phases, may or may not have certain setup things. It really depends on what you need to be in that template. You can auto number your jobs through these. You can see in this example, I've got construction jobs and I've got smaller T&M jobs. That might say that maybe that should say fixed price instead of construction. So quick job setup is another way to set up jobs. If you need more information on that, or you've got other things you're thinking about, yeah, please contact client care, and we're happy to contact you and talk that through. Thanks, Barclay. Is there anything else?
Nope, that was the only question.
Okay, well, I'll hand it to you then.
Okay, thank you. And thank you all for attending. Like Mike said, if you'd like additional information or if you have ideas on other topics you'd like to see covered, we're here to help. Please contact us at 877-213-3860 or clientcare@onpoint-software.com. Also, to keep up to date on new resources and upcoming events, you can follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We hope to see you later on this month. We have a couple of webinars coming up. Ensure you're getting timely, accurate, and financial information with best practice closing procedures in Spectrum, and then also using workflow in Spectrum. And everybody have a great day. We look forward to working with you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.